Welcome to Bite Size Rando. My name is DDR Kirby. Today, we're going to be talking about how to route through the first few checks in Turtle Rock. That includes this chest over here, which is the vanilla compass chest, as well as these two chests over here on the fire rod block side of Turtle Rock. And continuing onward, you'll eventually make your way to this door to get to the rest of the dungeon. Now, assuming you're not playing any key shuffle modes, you're going to want to open all three of these chests every time you enter this dungeon, regardless of whether or not you're in go mode. And that is, of course, because you're going to require the big key to complete the dungeon, as well as a couple of small keys, and you don't know where those could be, so you better open all three of these chests. It doesn't make sense to continue on forward, and then find out that you missed one of your required keys back here, and backtrack all the way to the beginning of the dungeon. So we know we need to open this compass chest, we know we need to open these two chests, and we know at the end of all this we need to get through this door to get to the rest of the dungeon. But what is going to be the fastest way to do all this? That's what we're going to be talking about in the rest of this video. Before we do some direct route comparisons, I want to take care of answering some smaller questions first. And the first of those is, if you already open these two chests on the fire rod block side, and you go and open the compass chest over here, you're going to have to use this Samaria platform here to get to the rest of the dungeon, to get to the Poke keys and the chain comps. But when you ride this platform, you can either go right or left here. And you may have seen people do either or both of these two paths. So which one of these do you think is actually faster? Let's look at the video comparisons and find out. So I have two side-by-side videos for you here. On the left-hand side, we're going to take the left route, and on the right-hand side, we're going to take the right route going through this middle path instead over here. And you can see from these videos that going on the left path is actually going to be faster, almost by a full second. So you can see it is about 0.8 or 0.7 seconds faster. So if you want to get from the compass chest to the Poke keys and the rest of the dungeon, you're going to want to optimally take this path on the left over here. Now, it is worth noting that taking this left path here is going to be slightly more risky because there are these two blue jellies, these two berry enemies along the way. And of course, on the right-hand path, there is also this skull enemy in the way, and oftentimes you can or might get hit by this enemy. But the skull enemy usually doesn't pose any risk as far as you falling off the platform, so you'll just take some damage. If you are on green mail, it is worth noting this will do 4 hearts of damage to you, so that is something to take into consideration if you are on low health. But usually you will not get knocked off the platform even if you have to tank that hit. In contrast, these jellies, now usually if you just take a hit while you're riding on the platform, you will never get knocked off. But if you happen to take a hit while you're in one of these kind of question mark stations where the platform can stop, then you will actually get knocked off the platform. And you can see these jellies are kind of positioned near this question mark spot where you can get knocked off. So usually, most of the time, you will be saved, but in this case, you can see that this jelly almost narrowly avoided knocking me off the platform because it was near that kind of stopping station. Now, you might wonder whether an appropriate strategy is to just slash the jellies so that they can't knock you off. That would normally work, but you can see that also that these jellies will become electrified, and it can be hard to predict exactly when that will happen. And of course, if you slash a jelly when it's electrified, you will still fall off the platform, and that applies at any point along your ride, not just at the rest stations. So slashing these jellies can be pretty risky, unless you have, of course, like sword beams to hit them from a distance. There are various other approaches you can use. You can use the bow and arrow to try and kill them as well. I would generally not recommend using the hookshot because when you use the hookshot, your platform freezes in place. So using bow and arrow is safe. If you have access to the magic cape, you can also use a little bit of magic to safely dodge the hits of the jellies if you so desire. But keep that in mind as you're taking this left path. Another question I wanted to answer involves this room in Turtle Rock, where you're required to use the fire rod to proceed. Now, if you don't have access to the hookshot, you're going to have to go down on this platform, and eventually, after a long ride, you'll have to shoot right twice and then down once, and that will open the door, and then you can step off the platform to proceed. But if you do have access to the hookshot, you can use an alternative strategy instead, where you shoot down here and then right twice, and then you can switch over the hookshot and use it to hookshot to this torch, and that will let you fall and then proceed, and that will be much quicker than the kind of vanilla strategy. Now, you saw that when I was doing that, I used a quick swap to get to the hookshot in order to hookshot to this torch. But an alternative approach is immediately after shooting Fire Rod, you can open your menu and then hookshot. And that'll usually be fast enough that you can hookshot just left to that torch, as opposed to waiting to go around and having to hookshot from this torch from the bottom. So which one of these do you think is faster? Let's look at the videos. Okay, so I actually have 4 different videos to compare this. I want you to just focus on the top 2 for now. So on the left-hand video, I'm going to be menuing to the hookshot and then putting left to this torch here. And it is important to note that hookshotting left to this left-hand torch is going to be faster than hookshotting to the right because it will result in less scrolling for the camera before it can reset you. And on the right side here, I'm going to be instead quick-swapping to the hookshot and then hookshotting from the bottom of this torch. And now, I will say that the timing of these is going to depend a little bit on exactly what items you have in your inventory. I've done this with the full inventory, but of course you may not have, the magic powder or mushroom, for example, so that can make things a little bit different. For you. We can see with this item loadout, having to menu 3 times or quick swap 3 times, it is about even, or potentially quick swapping is slightly faster. It'll of course depend on your exact execution. Now, if we look at these bottom 2 videos, I have some alternative approaches. So one of these is, you'll see it says quick swap once and then menu. This is kind of a hybrid approach that you can try out and see if you like it. For this one, you're going to shoot the fire rod, and before it reaches the torch, you're going to quick swap once. And that will make it so that you can menu a little bit faster, right? As opposed to having to menu 3 times, you'll only have to menu twice in this case. And that should be a little bit faster than having to just do the menu 3 times. Of course, it's really only a 0.2 second difference, but you can see if that strat works out well for you in terms of your execution. This bottom right video I will show is very hard to execute depending on your item loadout, but just to show that it is possible, even without menuing, to shoot the fire rod and just quick swap like mad, really fast, and still make it in time to hookshot left to this torch. And obviously that is going to be the optimal because you're getting the hookshot as fast as possible, and you're also not having to use your menu. But of course, depending on your item loadout, this can be very difficult to execute in real time. So you can see if that is feasible for you based on your execution speed and your quick swapping. I will say that if you do go for the quick swaps, you can elect to just try and go for this, and if you're off by 1, remember the 2 slots next to the hookshot are the bomb and the boomerang, and kind of worst case, you'll either lay a bomb into midair if you miss this, or you'll just throw your boomerang, and neither of those will actually slow you down. So if you want, you can just go for this, and if you hit it, great. If you miss it, then you might just fall back to doing this strategy. Now, of course, the worst case scenario is if you attempt this strategy and you get the quick swap okay, so you're on the hookshot, but you hookshot too late, and that way your hookshot extends all the way here and then retracts back. That's kind of the worst case that you want to avoid, so make sure that your Y press is on time if you are going for this kind of optimal strategy. But normally in runs, I would probably honestly just recommend going for this strategy, as it is kind of more reliable and easier to execute. But again, the choice is up to you. The next question we're going to tackle is, as you're going between these 3 locations, the compass chest, the fire rod outside, and the rest of the dungeon, you're pretty much always going to have to return to this main hub room to use the Samaria platform to do these traversals, right? That is, of course, unless you have access to the magic mirror. And if you do have the access to the magic mirror, then after opening, these chests, you can, of course, just mirror back to the entrance of the dungeon, and then go from the entrance of the dungeon to that main hub room again. But the real question is, does this actually save any time over just walking back to the main hub without using the mirror? Let's look at the videos and take a look. Okay, for this first comparison, we are getting from the compass chest to the fire rod block side. On the left-hand side, we're just going to go back to the main hub, and on the right-hand side, we're going to use the mirror and then go to the main hub that way. And you can see that it's already pretty obvious that the left side is going to win out here by a pretty significant margin. So this one is not particularly close. Looks like the left side is going to win out by about 3 or so, 2.5 seconds. I did do this comparison with the aid of the boots, but I'm not going to bother doing it without the boots because, it's going to be about the same. If anything, this left-hand route is benefited more because there is a very long dash that you can do here, and this side was still slower even with that benefit. So if you're going from the compass chest to the fire rod block side, you definitely never want to use the mirror. Just go through the main hub. Okay, this is going to be a similar comparison, but this time, instead of going to the Fire Rod Lock side, we're going from the compass chest to the Pokekey room, so that's the rest of the dungeon. And of course, we're going to take this left-hand side route, because we already said that one is the optimal one, and on the right-hand side, we're going to use the mirror, and you can already see that using the mirror is going to be way slower this time, so you definitely never want to use the mirror in this routing scenario. You also can see that it is going to be about 6 seconds slower, so definitely don't use the mirror here. Just go ahead and walk through this door, and then proceed upward to the rest of the dungeon if you're in this case. Okay, now things are getting a little bit more complicated. We're talking about getting from these two Fire Rod Lock chests over here to the Pokekey, so the rest of the dungeon over here. And the reason why there's so many videos is because the amount of time it takes you to get up and down this room with the rollers is going to depend on what equipment and what strategy you use. For example, on the right-hand side, so if you don't have any invincibility items, you're probably going to use some variant of this strategy, which involves using the hookshot to gain invincibility frames so that you don't take damage. But if you have the Cane and Burna, then instead you can do a Burna dash out of the doorway after stepping right a little bit, and then you'll invincibly get through both of these rollers. And of course, on the left-hand side, if you have the Magic Cape, that is going to be the fastest because, of course, the cape is OP. Now, on the top of all three of these, we're going to be using the boots and whatever equipment loadouts to make it back through these rollers in the same way that we've made it up. And on the bottom three videos, we're going to be using the mirror to the front of the dungeon instead. Now, one thing that's nice about using the mirror here is that there is a full magic refill for you underneath this pot, and that is going to respawn when you mirror to the front of the dungeon. So you'll start with full magic again. Whereas in these two videos, we're going to have to collect the full magic underneath this bottom set of these two pots. Over here, so the bottom of these two pots over here, to make sure we have enough magic. You'll notice that for the hookshot strategy, I did elect to skip this full magic refill because this amount of magic is actually sufficient for the rest of the dungeon. Now, of course, it is going to depend on your level of comfort as well as your the specific strategy you use later in the dungeon, so that's something to think about. But you can elect to skip this large magic if you want using the hookshot strats. You can also elect to, as a middle ground, lift this pot because there is a small magic in this one. So if you need just a little bit more magic, you can lift this pot, and that is going to be slightly faster than if you were to lift both of these two pots and get the big magic here. But it's really not that big of a difference, so decide based on your level of comfort. But as we see these kind of comparisons come to an end, you're going to see that in all three of these cases, so this is all the cases with boots, you're not going to want to use the mirror when you're getting from the Fire Rod Lock side to the Pokey. So you're going to want to just go back through the rollers using whatever strategy. And of course, you can also tailor this based on your expectation of your execution strategies here. And I will also note that in the hookshot strategy here, I do tank a hit from the roller here. That may or may not be a possibility for you depending on your health situation, so keep that in mind. But you'll see that the time difference here is, about 3.5 seconds. So that should be plenty of time to allow you to, use the hookshot an additional time to dodge that roller if you need to, I believe. So. Alright, this set of videos is going to be the same thing, except this time we don't have access to the boots. And without access to the boots, I believe using the hookshot is basically always going to be the best. You don't really want to deal with using the Cane and Burna or the Magic Cape. So on this top right video, we are going to use the mirror, and these bottom three is all kind of the same, except I did show the difference this time in collecting the small and large magic. So you see on the bottom right here, I'm collecting that full magic, which is going to be the slowest. On the top left, I skipped the magic altogether, and on the bottom left, I did elect to collect this small magic in the pot between the two chests. So that is going to make a small difference, so you see that that is behind this upper left video, but again, not that much of a difference. But if we go towards the end of these videos, you'll see that the time difference is actually not as big this time. So you'll see that using the mirror is still a little bit slower than if you weren't to collect any magic. But if you are to collect that full magic, by lifting those two pots, it is basically about the same. So in this case, you can kind of pick and choose based on your comfort level. Optimally, it is going to be faster to not mirror here, again, like it was in the previous comparison with the boots. But if you need to get that full magic, you might elect to mirror because it is a little bit easier and a little bit safer. I will note that for these videos, without the boots, I did elect to tank a hit from this roller. I couldn't find a great way of speeding through this roller without taking a hit, so that is going to cost you some health along the way. So you can play it based on your judgment, or just to make it easier to remember, you can just never mirror in this situation because it'll be a little bit easier to remember. But for this one, basically, take your pick. So far, the mirror hasn't really helped us much, maybe marginally in the case that you don't have the boots and you're trying to get from the fire rod chests to the pokey room. But there is one more set of time comparisons, and this is trying to get from the fire rod chests to the compass chest room here. So let's look at these comparisons. So we're going to look at with boots this time. Again, same sort of strats here. In fact, this is going to be the exact same strategies here. The only difference is, of course, when we make it back to the main hub, instead of going to the pokey room, we're going to be going left here to the compass room. And you'll see that in this case, mirroring is actually going to be faster, and it's not particularly close. So mirroring looks like it's going to be faster by maybe about I don't know, 4, maybe 5 seconds, depending on your equipment loadout. So in this case, you definitely do want to mirror. And now I'm going to show the same timing comparison, but this time without boots. So this time we're just using the hookshot. Again, if you don't have the boots, I would not really recommend using the Cane of Burna or the cape. It'll just burn through all your magic. But this time, we're going to use the mirror, and then again, we're going to get from the fire rod chest to the compass chest. And if I go through and see if I can speed up this video, you'll see that, again, it is not particularly close. It is definitely faster to mirror, and you'll see here that the time difference is even bigger this time, so it's about 6 seconds of difference. So whenever you're going from the fire rod lock side to the compass chest room, you'll definitely always want to mirror if you have the option to do so. So to recap what we learned in these previous sections, if you're coming out from checking the compass chest, you're never going to mirror, you're always going to come back to the main hub. If you're going to check the fire rod lock chests, then it depends on what you're doing afterward. If you're going to the pokey key afterward, then you're not going to mirror. But if you're going to the compass chest afterward, then you are going to mirror, okay? So with that in mind, there are a couple of different routes we want to consider. Route A is going to be, we're going to check compass chest first, then we're going to go to the fire rod lock chests, and then we're going to go forward to the rest of the dungeon, and there's not going to be any mirroring, okay? Route B is, instead of starting with compass chests, we're going to start with the fire rod lock side first. And of course, we know it's faster to mirror from here, so we're going to mirror, and then after mirroring to the front of the dungeon, we're going to go to get compass chests next, and then we're going to finish off by going left, of course, and then going to the rest of the dungeon here. So that is going to be Route B. And then Route C, I also want to compare that same route, but in the case that you don't have the mirror, which means instead of mirroring to compass chests, you're going to have to walk the way back. And we know that's going to be slower, but we don't know whether it's going to be slower or faster than Route A. So let's go ahead and look at those 3 different routes. Alright, here are the 3 videos corresponding to those 3 routes, routes A, B, and C. I'm going to speed up these videos since they are quite long. We already know, of course, that Route B is going to be faster than Route C because mirroring after collecting these 2 chests in the fire rod lock side is going to be faster than having to dash back through these rollers and having to collect this full magic as well. But we don't know how they compare, how they stack up to Route A, so that's the purpose of this comparison. This is going to be the set of videos comparing it when you do have the optimal equipment setup, so that is going to be with the Pegasus boots and the cape on hand, and you'll see that Route B is the fastest, followed by Route A and Route C, and what that means is that you should basically never do Route number C. So if you have the mirror, you're going to do this. You're going to check the fire rod lock side first, then you're going to mirror and then check compass chest. And if you don't have the mirror, then instead you're going to do compass chest first, then fire rod lock side, and then go to this pokey room. Now, this is going to be the same 3 routes, except this time we have different equipment. So this time we don't have the boots, and we we're just going to use the hookshot for everything. These comparisons are going to be a little bit slower. You'll see that I have to use the hookshot to dodge these rollers. I will note that this time I did manage to execute this room quickly enough that I avoided taking any roller hits, but that is quite difficult to do. So if you're planning on doing these strats, it's something you might want to have practiced. You can also use the hookshot in this room to hookshot to this chest to make walking down there a little bit faster. But you'll see in these set of time comparisons that the result is essentially the same. Route B is again the fastest, followed by Route A and then Route C. The timing is a little bit more of a stark contrast, so Route B wins against Route A a little bit more this time, but it's still the same result. If you have the mirror, then the route you're going to do is you're going to go to the fire rod lock side first, and then you're going to mirror after collecting these 2 chests up here, and then you're going to head over to the compass chest last. Okay, so that's going to be fastest. And if you don't have the mirror, then instead, like we said, you're going to first go over to the compass chest, and then after collecting that, you're going to walk back north, and then take this platform, and then you're going to go to the firewall lock chests, and then after that, you're just going to finish, and you're not going to mirror at all. Okay, so hopefully this answers all your questions about how to route this first set of checks in Turtle Rock. Hope this was helpful, and feel free to make use of this knowledge in your next run.